Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well on this fine Wednesday. All right. So I watched a certain episode of Locked On Baylor yesterday, and my good friend Cam Stewart, and I call him a good friend because he is just that. We have done a number of shows together. We have done Locked On Big 12 squads. We've done crossover editions. And Cam had some interesting comments. And the simple fact of the matter is, if you're a Baylor fan watching this podcast, sorry, but that's the price of doing business. And I will also say this. If you're going to argue that BYU's tampering, newsflash, everybody is tampering when it comes to the transfer portal. I'm sorry to break it to you. If that's breaking news to you, I don't know what else I can really do to regain your trust. But the simple fact of life is we hear coaches often out there who say, I've got receipts from X and X university that they were tampering with our players. How many of those actual coaches have actually given said receipts? Zero? One? I think there was a football one. Was it, who's the guy, offensive coordinator at Boise State? It'll come to me at some point. But simple fact of life is these coaches can claim that they've got receipts out there. Every single one of them has got skeletons in the closet, and they don't want their dirty laundry being aired if they air said dirty laundry about other programs. So Baylor fans, I understand you're upset. I understand that this young man, speaking of Robert Wright III, may have reneged on a contract or whatever other paperwork he may have signed to stay with the Baylor Bears. He opted to go elsewhere, and if BYU is where he ultimately lands, sorry, but here's the other part about it. Cam claimed that the church, speaking of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the sponsoring institution for Brigham Young University, is the one that's footing the bill for this. Wrong. Here's the deal. BYU as an entity, yes, the university itself is funded by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They subsidize the education of all of the students attending school there. I went to BYU. I had my education subsidized by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But BYU and BYU Athletics are two different entities. Yes, let's talk about this. Now, BYU Athletics is obviously an athletic department that operates inside BYU, Brigham Young University. But there are no funds, and they are tithing funds is what is the big deal with regards to BYU. That is what funds the university and obviously the subsidization of the education, that type of stuff. BYU Athletics does not, has not, and will not ever receive a dime of said tithing funds. They are considered to be sacred. They are not to be used for things like athletics. For years, there have been accusations that BYU Athletics has been subsidized by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I know people inside the BYU athletic department. I have family and friends who have worked at BYU. I can say without hesitation that no tithing funds, no funds from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, some of you Baylor fans may call it the Mormon Church, are going to BYU Athletics. BYU Athletics has to eat what it kills, to use that expression. The money BYU Athletics generates is what it has to operate its budget on. For years, quite literally decades, BYU did more with less. They were scrimping and saving and trying to get by with what they had. Trust me, you can talk to some of the coaches that coach under Lavelle Edwards, and they will tell you some absolutely incredible stories. Even when Bronco Mendenhall left for Virginia back, was that 2016? I had at least two coaches on his staff that went with him to Virginia who made it explicitly clear the reason why they were leaving BYU wasn't because they were unhappy being at BYU. It's because Virginia more than doubled their salaries. Now BYU is finally in the Power Four. They are making tens of millions of dollars via the contracts, TV and otherwise, that are coming in from their membership in the Big 12 Conference. And all of a sudden, all everybody wants to talk about is how BYU is just spending money like they're a drunken sailor. Great. So be it. Here's the deal. Brigham Young University Athletics aspires to be a top-tier athletics department. And I'm talking a department. They want to have top-tier football, top-tier basketball. They want to have top-tier everything. it's not just that BYU is funneling money into one or two sports. They want to have an athletic department that is competitive across the board. They just won both the men's and women's cross country titles this past year. They have got the Cougars, their dance team is 22 or 23 time national champions. Their soccer program has made it to a collegiate cup multiple times. They are competitive in multiple sports, but they understand that where the most money is generated from BYU Athletics is in football and men's basketball. So therefore, the lion's share of the money goes to those two programs. Therefore, BYU Athletics is going to allow boosters who have got hundreds, if not hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in the bank, who are tech entrepreneurs, supplement manufacturers. They have made money in a myriad of ways out there, and they want nothing more than to help BYU Athletics succeed in its mission to be a top tier Big 12 program, if not a top tier juggernaut in college athletics. So I understand that there can be accusations from my good friend Cam about the church funding this and paying these players like Robert Wright allegedly to come to BYU. That ain't it. That is absolutely factually incorrect. That money, if it is that Robert Wright III does pick BYU, will be coming from BYU's collective and obviously the revenue shares that are coming into effect once this house settlement is instituted. TBD on when that happens, but that should lay out exactly why BYU and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, cannot be equated on the same level when it comes to NIL, because BYU Athletics, once again, operates with its own budget that it generates itself. There is no subsidization of BYU Athletics from the main campus. Brigham Young University, it's not subsidizing anything with BYU Athletics. So if you want to be upset about it, so be it. And I understand when you lose a guy the caliber of a Robert Wright and he may be going to a program of another religiously affiliated university. Yeah, it's easy to cast accusations. It's easy to say that, hey, see, they're cheating and the church is helping them out. It's simply not the case. And I can't say anything more than that is going to prove my case other than telling you, like I said, I know people in the BYU athletic department. I've had family and friends who have worked at Brigham Young University, and I know how the inner workings go on at BYU. Trust me, bro. I guess that's the best way I can say. But yeah, so if you're upset, I understand. But at the same time, welcome to the reality of college sports. He who has the most money apparently wins more often than not. And like I said, for years, I have done this podcast for 6.5, coming up on 7 years. I have done nearly 2,000 audio episodes. I don't know how many thousands on YouTube. I do this literally every single day. And I talked often for years about how BYU did more with less. And I always advocated BYU invest in athletics, invest in football, invest in men's basketball. I use the term do more with more. And now that BYU's doing more with more, speaking of more with more money, suddenly they're the devil. I don't know. So be it. And if you want to come at me, go for it. My mentions are always a mess. Trust me. I've got all kinds of fun going on YouTube comments, social media, email, and the like. Reach out anytime. I'm happy to hear you out, but you start getting personal with me, that's where I draw the line. All right. Nonetheless, there you go. That should hopefully, in theory, clear up a few aspersions and a certain set of accusations that, like I said, my good friend Cam Stewart on Locked On Baylor decided to throw around, I think, a little bit recklessly yesterday on his edition of Locked On Baylor. All right, coming up next, BYU's not putting all of their eggs in the Robert Wright III basket. That would actually be really dumb if Kevin Young did all that, because let's be honest, if BYU gets outbid, Robert Wright III might be going elsewhere. But who else is BYU looking at? I've got two other names you'll want to monitor in terms of BYU's transfer portal targets, and we'll delve into them next right here on Locked On Cougars.